Slurp, burp, break, dance, swerp, burp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, burp, swerp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, swerp, earthquake.
Yo, my children are at school today. You got energized Vespers this morning. Guess it's the afternoon for you East Coasters. Not for me. I had a few things I had to take care of this morning before we could launch headlong into the show. I know we're like maybe a half an hour later than usual, but doesn't really bother me because I have a quiet house. There's this silly old draft board behind me. You guys can see it if you're watching the show. And on the other side of that is a dog, a 10-year-old dog. And that's the only sounds we'll hear in the house. Other than hopefully not a whole lot of like weather beating the outside. The rain has very much mellowed out today. Still drizzling, but I mean, it's like not even remotely close to what we had going on yesterday. It was it was something fierce. I don't know if you guys saw the videos of what was going on. It's supposed to mellow out, I think, completely by later on this evening. Hopefully all of you guys, wherever you may be, are not too severely impacted. And I know Bruski was well, he's in surgery right now. Has nothing to do with the rainstorms. But I know he lost his power for like half a day. But I do want to start today's show by wishing the great Aaron Bruski a safe surgery. He's talked about it on Twitter. I think he's mentioned it here on the show as well. He was initially diagnosed a couple years ago with a carpal tunnel variant that did not turn out to be the correct diagnosis. He had a surgery for that didn't help. He is under the knife today for surgery for thoracic outlet syndrome. Most of you in the sports world probably tie that to Steven Strasburg. It's probably the highest profile athlete who's had the surgery for that. And I know that he's sort of never been the same, but he is functional again, which is what we're hoping for the big dog. So all the best, get well quick. Let's make sure that that's a nice, safe recovery, safe surgery. And if Brew is getting back to his old ways in a couple of weeks, hopefully that's the fingers crossed. You'll get the maniac level Brew that we haven't seen, frankly, in a few years because he has not been able to type. I don't know if you guys know this, and I don't want to go too deep on it because it's his story, but Brew does all of his typing through dictation now. He doesn't click the mouse in the traditional sense. Like he has a program where if he hovers the mouse over something for a few seconds, it auto clicks it for him. These are just all things to keep him from not having to like use the fingers on his hand. People don't realize this. He's doing all this stuff and he like can't use his arms. It's crazy because this is the guy who pioneered the, 15,000 word fantasy update articles. But anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. Big news of the morning here on Fantasy NBA today is that we have a rough estimate on Joel Embiid. Woj tweeting about 2 hours ago that Joel Embiid, I'll just read it verbatim here. Woj's tweet, Philadelphia 76ers star Joel Embiid underwent a left meniscus procedure. They still really don't want to call it a surgery on Tuesday and will be reevaluated in approximately 4 weeks. Maybe I should throw that up on the screen. Maybe that would have made more sense if I had tossed the Woj tweet up there. We'll do that while I'm talking for those that are watching live with us here. So there's a few things at play here, and I think it's important to get the right feel for it. And there's the tweet for you. And those of you guys that play a lot of fantasy basketball, you're fully aware of the word that I'm going to be pointing at first. The word is reevaluated. He is not going to be back in 4 weeks. It's not going to happen. But there is now a chance, small, medium, large, we don't know yet, that at that 4-week mark, they'll say, oh, okay, well, you're 2 weeks away. you can start a ramp-up program. You're 3 weeks away from a ramp-up program. So now we got to break out the calendar. It's important. Because look, the basketball season, what do we decide now? We're 61 now officially percent of the way through the season, and that's games played. So by actual time, it's a little bit longer than 31% because you've got the All-Star break, but the season is over on I think it's April 14th. Is that the Sunday? Yeah, Sunday, April 14th, which from 2 days ago, February 4th would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks from 2 days ago. So we're 9 weeks, 9 times 7, 63, and 5 days, 68 days away. We're 68 days away from the end of the NBA regular season, which I think is farther than most people realized. You guys thought I was going to say that's not that far away, but I actually think it's the opposite. Okay. 68 days away from the end of the NBA regular season. It's not a giant number, obviously, because we're, again, well beyond the halfway point. But it's also not that small of a number. And when you just start to look at the math of all of this, if he's really going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, that's 28. We can do that math pretty quickly. 68 minus 28 means that there would still be 40 days left in the NBA regular season when Joel Embiid is reevaluated. So 40 days left in the regular season when he's reevaluated. That's when the math really starts to take hold. That's when the claws get in. 40 days left for Roto is an eternity. It's a month and a half almost. You can get a lot of good games out of a guy of Joel Embiid's ability in even a fraction of 40 days. Like, even if he's back with 15 days left, you're going to want 2 weeks of Joel Embiid. But what do we think that means? Okay, so what do we think the ramp up could be? I think the ramp up after 4 weeks, honestly, my guess, and I don't want to get into this just yet. I want to come back to what I actually think is going to happen here. But with 40 days left, let's say that there's a 2 to 3 week ramp up. So call that 14 to 20 days of ramp up before he takes the floor. That means he takes the floor again with about 20 days left in the NBA regular season. That's still 3 weeks, mind you. And for those who have head-to-head leagues that go to the end of the regular season, that would mean that he comes back basically on like the 3rd day of your fantasy playoffs. Meaning, for those of you who go to the end of the regular season, which I staunchly believe is a terrible idea, but Yahoo's public leagues are set up that way, so there really isn't a whole lot that you can do about it if you're not in charge of those. Like, the regular season for Yahoo public leagues is still a long way left. How many? There's like 6 weeks left. The NBA to a Yahoo head-to-head regular season. Still an eternity left on that front. But again, like, those leagues have 3 IL spots, Yahoo public prize leagues, and go to the end of the regular season. So you can easily store players. I mean, 3 IL slots in a league that's 10 players with 3 bench slots. Like, it's a massive percentage of the league you can just plop into your IL, guys that have almost no hope of coming back. You can still squat on them because there's almost no way you're going to have 4 guys on a roster that short that actually need to be on your IL. And if you do, okay, fine. Then, maybe you make a cut. But odds are pretty low. Roto, what if you got 3 weeks out of him? And I get it. He'd come back at the end of the regular season with 3 weeks left, and he would play 19 minutes the first game back, and then 22, and then 22 again. And if there's a back-to-back in there, which I didn't check here for the show, sorry, he probably wouldn't play it. Then there's another 22. And so we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 to 12 ball games maximum, I think. And maybe skips 2 of those and has limited minutes in like 8 of them. But again, who cares? Because he's Joel Embiid. And even in 25 minutes a ball game, he's probably still a top 40 fantasy player. Maybe better than that, honestly. Because again, in full minutes this year, he was number 1. He was ahead of Shea before he played through a knee injury, had like 2 bad ball games, and then his leg got blown up. Joel Embiid in 22 minutes a game is top 50. I could almost guarantee it. Joel Embiid in 25 minutes a game is probably inside the third round. Joel Embiid, if he gets into the mid to high 20s, now he's probably early third, mid second range. So absolutely, there's a reason if your league goes to the end of the year to hold on to Joel Embiid right now. But again, we got to get to the math of all of this. If your league doesn't go to the end of the regular season, you start to shave days off of that. And you heard on the math we just did, if he's reevaluated in 4 weeks and he's playing again 3 weeks after that, you have 20 days left. 19, actually, in your regular season. If your league doesn't compete the final week, you're down to 12 days. If your league doesn't compete the final 2 weeks, you're down to 5 days, meaning you'd probably get 2 games of Joel Embiid, and probably one of them would be 18 minutes and the other would be 20. I mean, yeah, they'd be 2 probably pretty good games, but what does it cost you to get to that point? If your league ends 3 weeks early, I think there's a very real chance you don't get Joel Embiid back. There's a shot. There's an outside shot. Well, let's look at this from the other perspective, too, because I think we were being kind of, I don't want to say conservative in our estimates. What if we got a little bit more liberal in our estimates of how fast he could ramp up to play again? What if the ramp up was only 2 weeks instead of 3? Now you have 47 days left in the regular season instead of 40. Now you have effectively, that's incorrect. You'd have 27 instead of 20. You'd have 26 instead of 19, technically, if we want to really get into the weeds on this thing. That's actually pretty important because if your league goes to the very end, you might actually see Embiid before your playoffs start. And by the second week of your playoffs, if they're really doing the ramp up the old-fashioned way, you might get some pretty good numbers. And by the last week of your playoffs, you're probably getting 1 or 2, like, almost full tilt games. So that's, I think, a best case, absolute best case scenario. I don't think the odds are that that one happens. What I just mentioned, him being back in 6 weeks, I think I would put my money on more like between 7 and 8 weeks he makes his return. But again, the short version of that is if your league goes to the end of the regular season, you try to find a way to sit on him until then. Or trade. Maybe you can trade him to somebody who is at, kind of a top spot in the league as a first-round buy. They can afford to give up somebody, and then your team makes a run, something like that. So there are a few different ways to play this, but at least we have a starting point now with Joel Embiid. Officially, welcome to the show. I'm Dan Bespers. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation. Please do follow me over on social at Dan Bespers. Those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. I do way too much on social media. Way, way, way too much. Like an unhealthy amount of social media use. But I don't plan on changing that anytime soon because it's become incredibly difficult to get seen, noticed, shared in the fantasy space. Which, by the way, brings up another point here. While I'm doing my promo at the beginning of the show, I have a rant that I'm not actually upset about it, but I do feel rant level. Again, at Dan Bespers over on social media. I do hope we'll find you guys over there. We have our trade deadline live show coming up. That link is in the show description, no matter how you're taking in the podcast. I'll also throw it in the chat room just in case anybody that's watching live wants to go click on that. Please do throw a thumbs up on our trade deadline live show. We're at 708 now. Made a nice little push yesterday. I would like to get 42 more before we start our show 2 days from. I don't know if we can do it because I think we're running out of people that have YouTube accounts. But if you have one, please do click on that link in the show description to go to the trade deadline live show. Like, subscribe. That's a big deal. That, like, Thursday is probably our biggest single growth opportunity day of the calendar year. So that's why I lean in so hard. It's why I'm so annoying about this. I want to like grind as hard as I can to make that day as special as possible. And then I need your guys' help to get there. But my rant is my rant is this is a really complicated field to grow in, because if you're good at it, people that find your stuff are not going to want to tell anybody else about it. So like, you can get into a league, one person in the league can find your stuff, and it's probably going to take them like 3 years of winning before someone else in the league is like, hey, how did Joe get so good? Hey, how did Erica get so good? And then they start to bug them. They're like, what do you do? What is it that? And they're like, oh, okay, fine. I'm following Dan or whatever it is. I got to figure out a way, and I'm open to your suggestions out there, universe. Followers, friends, confidants. I'm open to your suggestions on how I can get people to tell their league about this podcast. I have no idea. I don't have a clue. Don't know what to do. Maybe I'll run a promo on like the second to last week of the regular season, but that probably wouldn't even make sense because a lot of head leagues will be over. I think in the 4 weeks left in the regular season, I'll run a promo where if people tell their league about this podcast, I'll do something extraordinary for them, like the world's hugest discount on next year's fantasy pass or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I got to figure it out on the fly. But anyway, that's my issue right now. Let's get into the recap part of the show a little bit. Dallas beat the zombie 76ers, and I call them that in this one because Tyrese Maxey, and I guess we can talk about the Sixers side first. We'll come back. Tyrese Maxey had 3 fouls in the first 6 minutes of the ball game. Philly actually got off to a pretty good start, mostly because Dallas was kind of coasting, and then they started to try a little bit more. The number of people out there who want Paul Reed to fail is very weird right now. Like I said, I want him getting 25 minutes a ball game. I've said that on the show a couple of times. I think if he gets to 27, 28, it's sort of gravy mode. This is a really tough matchup. Mavs went 5 out most of the ball game, except the Dwight Powell minutes, basically. And so Paul Reed was dealing with switching. Like, how the hell is he going to deal with Luka and Kyrie? This is a terrible matchup. And he's still getting over a cold/flu. He will be fine. I will admit, though, someone in one of my leagues offered me Cam Johnson for Paul Reed, and I took it because I remain more bullish on Cam Johnson than most, I think. But Paul Reed is a hold. He's a hold. Mo Bamba played 18 minutes. That takes care of most of the center minutes. I think Marcus Morris may have grabbed a couple in there. But, if Paul Reed's playing better and healthy, he's not going to score. 2 points on 1 out of 6 shooting is unusual. He's going to get you some boards. He's going to get you some defensive stats, and he's usually going to do it on decent percentages, but he's just not right now. But he will be. As someone who's sick all the time, I can verify, eventually you get better. And unless he has 2 children traveling with him like I do, he'll probably stay healthy for more than a week and a half. So Tobias Harris, he's going to go on a big run here. Maxey will as well, provided he's not in foul trouble and having a weird ball game. Kelly Oubre, Paul Reed, those are the other guys you want to be using for the Sixers right now. For the Mavericks, Josh Green is on a 2-game heater. He went 6 of 9 shooting, and I think we all know that's not a sustainable number. I'm not in the add Josh Green boat. I don't think it sticks. The reason you'd be adding Josh Green would be if you think the Mavs trade him to get a solid power forward. They've been linked to Kyle Kuzma and Jeremy Grant, which sounds like a harder thing. They've been linked to some lesser power forwards that maybe wouldn't require them to trade the young guys they're kind of semi-excited about. I don't think you need to squat on Green because, we have a body of work to know that this is not a sustainable number. I'm more interested in, are the Mavericks going to actually pick a replacement center here with Derek Lively out? Because 2 games back, Rashawn Holmes played 30 minutes out of nowhere. And the last 2 games, it's been Maxi Kleber that's picked up the center minutes. if we somehow could know, is any of these guys actually going to get a normal amount of center minutes, I would say to pick up that guy. I don't know. So far, it's 3 games in a row now. 3 games in a row. The center that has started for the Mavericks has played near or all the way starters minutes. Again, there's no way to know that that's actually something that sticks, and presumably Lively will be back at some point here, so this isn't a super long-term decision. But I would love, like, if the Mavs came out and said, oh, Maxi Kleber's starting their next ball game. I think they play a back-to-back tonight, if I'm not mistaken. Am I getting that right? I don't have everybody's schedule right in front of me right now. Quick check on Mavericks schedule. They are indeed. They're in Brooklyn to take on the Nets here on the back-to-back. We know Kleber's probable, but we don't know if he's starting. So... If we find out Kleber's starting, I think I would probably add and play. Because it seems like whoever's starting for the Mavs at center is going to get some minutes right now. By the way, there was a Woj report overnight before we get into anything else here. Then we sort of finished this first game. I'm not interested in Grant Williams. I'm not interested in Jaden Harvey. I'm not interested in Derek Jones Jr. I'm not interested in Tim Hardaway when Luka and Kyrie are there. So, yeah, we're good on this ball game. By the way, there was a Woj report overnight that I forgot to mention, suggesting that Kyle Kuzma, Malcolm Brogdon, and Bojan Bogdanovic are growing less likely to be traded. I never thought Bogdanovic was going to get traded because the Pistons, like, they have to have some veteran on that team or it'll really all come, as if it hasn't come apart yet, it'll really all come apart. I'm not sure I believe that Brogdon's not getting traded. Feels a little silly because the Blazers do actually have a couple of veterans on that team they could lean on for guidance, but maybe they want that as well. And then for Kuzma, I know they just want a lot. So I do think there's a very real chance he stays put because the price is too high. All right, let's keep shuffling along here. Cleveland blew out the Kings. The Cavs are good, man, and they're still working some of their best players back. By the way, Cavs are technically the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference right now. They're 5 back to the Celtics. That's not happening. But Cleveland has a very real shot to end as the 2 because the Doc Rivers Bucks are trying to figure out what the hell they're doing in the middle of the season. The Knicks are banged up, so that's the reason I don't know that they catch them. But, man, Cavs, like, defensively, they are so nasty. As far as the Kings go, Malik Monk has warmed back up again. I think I still trust him more head-to-head than Roto. His game is just not, this is Malik Monk we're talking about, super Roto-friendly. Head-to-head, he makes a lot of sense because he scores, he gets assists, usually some threes. You know, you hope you catch him on a week where the field goal percent isn't as bad. Kevin Huerter played 31 minutes again. If he gets over 30 minutes, he's probably startable. He's obviously not my favorite guy, but on the season, he's number 145 in 25 minutes and over. I think it's been about 3 weeks. If I'm remembering the number right, he's back up to 31 minutes, and he's shooting well. He's at 50% over that stretch, and he's number 69 in 9 category leagues. I'm trying to remember if it was longer than that. No, I think it was right around 3 weeks ago. Was it 2.5 weeks ago? No, right around 3 weeks ago. Yeah, that was when it all kicked into gear for Huerter. So again, as long as he's getting 31 minutes, he's the top 100 guy. You play Huerter. If the minutes trend back down, that's why he's sort of in our stream while warm universe. The Ward. He's a play as long as he's warm. And for him, the warmth has to do basically with minutes per game. Cleveland, Max Strus, 22 points, 6 3-pointers. He finally had himself a better shooting game because it's been a haul for that dude, man. I know on yesterday's podcast, I finally said, man, maybe I should give up on him getting back up over 42% from the field. Well, Max went from 40 to 40.6 in 1 ball game. I want 2 more like that, and I'll be satisfied because then at that point, it'll be basically a top 90 play, and I'll stop threatening to give up. Maybe. I don't know. But this is why I'm good with it. I mean, this game was a blowout. He got 13 shots in 26 minutes. So the usage was there. The steals were there. The boards were there. Like, still like what I'm seeing. I still believe Karis LeVert is going to end up a drop here in the not too distant future. He had a good enough ball game here. Some of it was blowout related. Some of it was just that he's on sign of a field goal percent surge at the moment. And I think Darius Garland, we can probably start now. He got up to 27 and a half, 28 minutes in this ball game, meaning he'll probably target around 30 in the next one. And that should be enough for him to be, top 75 to top 90 range. If he can sort out the turnovers, that was a big deal earlier this year. Then he moves up towards that top 50 range. And we proceed. Lakers at Hornets. This game was briefly a blowout, and then Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges went absolutely nuts in the fourth quarter, made it a ball game, but Anthony Davis was just simply too much. Triple-doubled for the third time in his career. I think, have all three of them been? No, two of the three I think have been this year. Teams are doubling AD more, and his passing has really come along, like a lot. An impressive amount of growth from AD's passing. Not surprisingly, he was a plus 16 in this game. And when AD was off the floor, the Lakers were just getting ripped to pieces because their defense remains super weird. Let's do the fantasy thoughts, and then I have a couple of thoughts on just Lakers. I know I watched them, and so, but I think we can use stuff like that. Like, if you're really digging in on a team, you can see more about what they're doing. For right now, I know Rui Hachimura is in the starting five, and he gives them a little bit of size, which is good, but he does not have even remotely close to the lateral quickness of a Jared Vanderbilt or a passing lane ability of a Jared Vanderbilt. So, you see the limitations. Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges were cooking people. Rui at times, and they'd get switches, and they'd cook Reeves, and then they'd cook D'Lo. And honestly, they cooked LeBron. LeBron's not chasing dudes right now. He's saving up for offense. So I think the Lakers, they just may keep rotating. Rui's going to start here until they cool off because they've won 3 games in a row. They've been nice wins. He's not startable in 12-teamers. I don't care that Rui played 29 minutes yesterday. The fantasy game just isn't thick enough with AD and LeBron in there. If a superstar misses a game, I would consider playing Rui, but that's about as far as I'd go. As far as Charlotte's concerned, you got 4 guys that you can play most days. Nick Richards played 32 minutes, but he sort of got Anthony Davis right out of this ball game. He's fine most days. Then you got PJ, Miles Bridges, and Brandon Miller. Those are the 3 guys you're playing right now while LaMelo Ball is out. We don't know when LaMelo's coming back. We've heard rumblings that Gordon Hayward might not actually be all that far away from returning, but is very much on the trade block. So who the hell knows there? I am not stashing Gordon Hayward. I don't like his fantasy game at this point in his career. He is old and slow. He was number 132 in 32 minutes of ball game in what you can only really describe as like a best case usage scenario for him. Other than, I guess, if he magically comes back. I mean, he's coming back from a calf injury, so it's not like they're going to give him 32 minutes out of the shoot. The only way this works for Hayward is if he doesn't get traded, LaMelo gets shut down, and it's these guys plus Gordon, because he would just come in and take all the, leaky black Bryce McGowan's minutes, and there'd be plenty of usage. But we're asking a lot there, and we're probably still looking multiple weeks down the line, so pass. Hey, do we have enough points in Clippers-Hawks? My God. 290 points in a regulation ball game. Clippers are a fantasy gold mine. Mostly James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. And this one, no Zubats. He sat out the last game of their road trip. I believe this is the last game of it. Yeah. Zoo's going to work his way back up to being the regular starting center. He'll probably be like a top 125 type of guy, which is startable in most formats. I just, I feel like putting the stamp on him here just so everybody kind of knows where we sit. I have the combination of James Harden and Kawhi Leonard on like 70% of my roto teams. Not all of them, because in some of them, I'm in people that listen to the podcast, and so you guys didn't let me get him in all those guys. But the Yahoo Public Prize Leagues, which is where I'm playing against people who don't know who I am, I think I got him in both of these guys in almost every single draft, and those teams are all either in first or second place, basically because of these guys. I mean, the rest of my draft was fine, but it didn't need to be all that great because Kawhi, you got him in the third round, and he's number 4 by totals right now. And James Harden, I think I got him as late as the 50s in one of those drafts. He's number 16 on a per game basis and by totals, actually, both. These guys are just destroying people. Anyway, no real thoughts on the Clippers side. Zubats coming back will render Mason Plumlee and, frankly, Russell Westbrook afterthoughts. And so then, again, you peel back to sort of the main superstars around it. Atlanta's the more interesting side of this ball game because there's a lot sort of hanging in the balance on the Atlanta side. Who are they? What are they going to do at the trade deadline? And, we sort of don't know precisely who the Hawks are going to be at the deadline. Let's zoom in a little tighter on these Atlanta names. So let's go with the easy stuff. And interestingly, there really isn't much. Onyeka Okongwu is easy because Capella's out for a couple weeks with an injury. It finally happened. It's not that we were waiting for it, but you just knew it was coming. Jalen Johnson and Trae Young. I think there's almost a 0% chance, approaching 0, a horizontal asymptote, near 0, that those 3 guys are staying put. I mean, the offers would have to be so insane for the Hawks to, specifically Jalen Johnson, in my eyes, is probably the guy least likely to go anywhere. Even in a blow up, like at least in a blow up, you could be like, all right, well, maybe they trade Trae Young. I don't think that's happening either. Clint Capella, people asked me if I thought his injury makes him harder to trade. I don't think so because the expectation is that he's just out for like 2 weeks. And if something lingers, then maybe that's a reason. But like anybody that would trade for Capella is probably okay to sit on him for another week and a half before he ends up having to play for them. Because again, you've got an all-star break coming up later this month. There's a lot of downtime before the games kind of ramp back up in frequency at the end of February and then that through the end of the season. So, no, I don't think it really changes the odds of Capella getting traded. I still think that there's like a pretty good-sized non-zero shot. I think anybody saying 50-50 is probably going too high. I don't know if anybody even said that. I've said this before on the show. I actually don't have time to know what anybody else is saying in the fantasy space. I simply don't. I just have to get the facts and I interpret them my own way. But if someone out there is telling you there's a good chance Clint Capella gets traded, I think that's probably aiming too high. I think there's a chance he gets traded. And I'm sure the Hawks are exploring it, but they're not going to take nothing. So what would I say? 25, 30%? That might even be too high. 20% chance Capella gets traded. But, again, that's one of those moments where a guy like Okongwu goes from being, top 100 to top 130 range to top 50. DeJounte Murray seems likely to be traded, although, again, it also sounds like the Hawks are not getting the kinds of offers they wanted for him because word is squeaking out that he's been a problem in the locker room and the buyer's market. It's not a seller's market right now for whatever reason. So the teams, I think some of it's just like a lack of assets from teams that want to go all in on DeJounte Murray. We've heard Lakers, we've heard Nets, we've heard Sixers. I don't think these teams are all going to go nuts to outbid each other. But who knows? I mean, maybe DeJounte Murray gets traded. He still seems like the most likely to get traded on this Hawks team. If he gets moved, that means there's a lot left that gets dumped into the big bucket for Saddiq Bey, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter are the 3 guys that benefit the most because, look, Jalen Johnson's been given plenty. Trae Young is always going to have plenty. Okongwu's the center, so it doesn't change his job all that much. Unless Capella doesn't get moved, then maybe you see perhaps a little bit more sort of tandem center lineup. So I guess it could help Okongwu a little bit. But DeAndre Hunter, who's working his way back, he had 24 points in 19 minutes yesterday. And I've said it for 2 weeks on the podcast now that I think he's someone you consider squatting on through the deadline because there's also a chance that a guy like Saddiq Bey gets moved or Bogdan Bogdanovic, frankly. Now, if multiple guys get moved, DeAndre Hunter's going to have no choice but to figure out a way to get healthy and then take a bunch of shots. He's a tough hold on the head-to-head side because Hunter's probably not going to be playing in back-to-backs. Maybe the rest of the year. I don't know. Possibly they get him in there towards the end of the season, but I wouldn't expect it. But, Roto side, he doesn't have a great Roto game, but at a certain point, you're just given enough shots that it doesn't matter. You find a way inside the top 100 just on sheer volume alone. If Murray's the only guy traded, Saddiq Bey probably stays as a fringe startable player. If Murray does not get traded, I don't think Hunter or Bey needs to be on a roster. So there's like all these weird permutations of, okay, what if Murray and Bey get traded? Great. Then DeAndre Hunter is a must roster guy. What if it's Murray and Bogdanovich? Then Hunter and Bey probably are rostered. What if Bogdanovich stays put and nobody gets traded? He's probably still inside the startable range. If Murray gets traded only, Bogdanovich is a yes, obviously. So again, there's all these sort of like, how many different ways can you move 4 guys, yes or no? And you probably just need to be ready for it more than anything else. Before we get to Golden State, Brooklyn, want to just take a brief moment in the middle of the show to remind everybody to please follow on Twitter over at Dan Bespris. And also to ask you all, when you guys go to the bathroom, like in public, you close the door behind you, right? You close the stall door. You don't want just some rando walking through the toilet and seeing you doing your business. So why would you let people look in on you when you're going online? See what I did there? Your online privacy is important, and that is why I choose ExpressVPN, and you should too. Using the internet without a VPN is like going to the bathroom and not closing the door. How is that? Well, your internet service provider, your ISP, knows every website you visit. The ISP is everybody else in that bathroom watching you drop a deuce. They can sell this information to ad companies, tech giants, whatever, and then they use that data to target you. ExpressVPN creates a secure encrypted tunnel, which is your bathroom stall door, between your device and the internet, so your online activity cannot be seen by anyone. It works on phones, laptops, routers even. So anyone who shares your Wi-Fi in that case would be protected. And all you got to do to fire up ExpressVPN is open the app, click one button, boop, on your screen. Goes from red to green, and your bathroom door is closed. Right now, get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN free by going to expressvpn.com/hoopball. That's right, old website name. That's expressvpn.com/hoopball to get 3 extra months free. expressvpn.com/hoopball. Check them out right now. Golden State at Brooklyn, 109-98. Jonathan Kuminga continued his ridiculous tear he's on. It's not going to last forever. We know this. And it's not I'm not like trying to be a buzzkill or anything. It's just the simple facts of the matter that he's on a vicious heater. And I still think if you can sell high, you should. Someone was asking me if I felt that same way about points leagues. And that's actually a really good question that I hadn't thought about. No, I think you can probably just roll with him in points leagues because we know both percentages are going to come down here when the heater evaporates or dissipates or just sort of cools to a calm boil or whatever. So points leagues, I think you can probably just stick with it. 9-cat, he's rolling, second round value over the last 2 weeks. We all know that's not a thing that's just going to be the rest of the season. But again, with every good game he puts up, you can probably aim a little higher. 2 games back, you could probably have gotten top 75. Now, with another 2 decent ball games, you can probably aim for top 60. Those are pretty good players. Top 60 guys are like, these are pretty rare. Anthony Edwards is number 50. Okay, that's not going to happen. But like, if you get Franz Wagner for him, Bam Adebayo, Rudy Gobert is number 60. I don't know if you go JJJ because shutdown is coming here. DeJounte Murray, if somebody's worried about what happens here at the deadline. Vooch at 46 maybe is attainable. I don't think these guys are completely out of the question with as hot as Kuminga's been. So aim high, see what happens. No Andrew Wiggins. He missed this ball game. Brandon Pajemski now has had 3 good ones in a row. He very much does belong on rosters, at least while he's getting these giant minutes. And it does seem like he's coming out of his little rookie haze that lasted about 3-4 weeks. So make sure Podziemski is rostered and started right now. When Wiggins comes back, you could potentially, I think, play it by ear. The Klay Thompson got benched down the stretch in this ball game, so that's a thing now, but he's a hold. Even though he's very much a shell of his former self, he's still a hold. Brooklyn's weird. So Lonnie Walker got hurt, which kind of happens with him. Doesn't sound like it was a huge deal, but who knows? Hamstring was the ruling here. Cam Johnson, another decent ball game. 13 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, a steal, 2 blocks. He's been coming on lately after a prolonged cold spell. Cam is up to number 109. So again, if you started him every day this year, that's a startable player in 12-team leagues. I think that's per game. Am I looking at the right page here? Yeah, per game. So Cam Johnson is a start. And you guys yelled at me because I said you definitely need to at least hold him through the trade deadline. But this is kind of why. Like, no Ben Simmons in this game, injury management. He's going to be a pain in the butt to roster. No Dorian Finney-Smith in this ball game either. He's hurt right now. And then we know Dorian Finney-Smith, we know Royce O'Neal, we know Spencer Dinwiddie. These guys are on the trade block. You know, if you clear out a little bit of space, Cam Johnson goes from being pretty good, which he's been lately, to being very good. Sounds like the Nets are not trading Mikal Bridges under any circumstance. Cam Thomas, I referred to as a big-time sell high, and then he came out and shot 4 for 21 in this ball game. He is still a sell high because he's taking a crap ton of shots, and people don't realize that these types of games actually hurt more than the good ones help. Just the math of it all. You guys are just going to have to believe me on this one. See what you can get for Cam Thomas. If you can get top 75, you definitely do it there. And then Dennis Smith Jr. is another name I wanted to mention because he ended up playing 31 minutes here with Lonnie Walker basically going down. And I've said on the show a couple of times, I think Dennis Smith Jr. could be a really interesting trade deadline winner if Spencer Dinwiddie gets moved and or Dorian Finney-Smith. Like I do think that it's kind of a two-way. And, you know, Ben Simmons out, Finney-Smith out, Walker got hurt, so Smith got a bunch of extra run here. But, I mean, you take Spencer Dinwiddie out of the equation, you drop 30-plus minutes of point guard spot back into the bucket. Yes, some of that can go to Ben Simmons if he ever gets ramped up to any reasonable number of minutes, but Dennis Smith Jr. ends up getting a decent chunk of that, I would think. Toronto got blown out by New Orleans, so we don't want to read too much into this. Gary Trent did leave early with an injury of his own. That's annoying because he was a guy I kind of wanted to see how he was going to look leading up to the deadline. And now we don't get to. Now, how severe was it? It was back soreness. They were getting spanked. Maybe he plays in their next ball game. This game was over very, very early. As I've said before, I think Gary Trent Jr. needs 2 guys to get out of his way, probably Bruce Brown and Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder might be the same story, needing Bruce Brown and Gary Trent to probably get out of the way. At least Jakob Poeltl played pretty well in this game. But again, don't read too much into the Toronto side because they got destroyed. Brandon Ingram had his, I can hit 3-pointers game, which he doesn't do very often. He's number 69 in 9-cat. This one got him up to 1.5 3-pointers per ball game. Ingram just generally kind of float back into this range, the like 60 to 90 range, because he has some weird flaws in his fantasy game. But he's a safe play in this spot. This game doesn't really change. Like, he's not going to just become a guy who hits 8 3-pointers a night. Again, ball game was over early on both sides, but it is worth noting that with Larry Nance back, JV's projections should drop. With Herb Jones back, Trey Murphy's projections drop. Trey did have 2 blocks in this game to kind of float his value, but I don't know that. You start Valanciunas out of that group of 4. I don't know that I start Herb or Trey or Nance unless someone is out. We need a thinning of the herd. Subtraction by addition here, fantasy-wise. You're not adding Dyson Daniels. You're not adding Jose Alvarado. This game, again, blowout. So toss it. And that is your card from yesterday. I did do a little sort of quick hitter Twitter thing on the upcoming card tonight. We can do this very, very fast. because I don't think that, I mean, there will be more stuff that breaks over the course of the day. The big things I'm watching for tonight, Tyrese Halliburton's minutes, because I am actually contemplating a buy low there if we had any idea how long he was going to be on this minutes cap. Jalen Suggs' defensive stats coming back. I don't know if he's going to do enough in the other stuff, but I think he's probably worth a look. The Zombie Grizzlies. We don't have, by the way, Dorian Finney-Smith, Lonnie Walker, they've been ruled out for tonight. So that already happened. And Cam Johnson is doubtful. That would probably be just sort of a general rest game. So, fart sound effect there for getting any information. We don't, however, have the Grizzlies injury update for today yet. So will they have 13 guys out or only 11 guys out? And it matters a lot because, like, if Santi Aldama comes back, I would play him. And if Vince Williams comes back, I would play him. I'd like to know if Luke Kennard can get up to 28, 29, 30 minutes a ball game. Is his body going to allow it? Anyway, Mavs center spot tonight. We already talked about that because they just played. Ben Simmons, his minutes for tonight. We talked about Dennis Smith Jr. already. And then Brook Lopez. He's been out for personal reasons for a little bit. Would love to see him come back, but if he doesn't, just make sure that Bobby Portis is already on your radar. And that's kind of the big stuff I'm looking at for tonight. I know that you guys in the chat room had a couple of questions on some of these games coming up this evening. So what I want to do here is I'll leave this sort of big. Nope, let's make that a little smaller. There we go. I'll leave the schedule for tonight up on the board here while I do my quick scan through the chat room to see if you guys brought up some players that I maybe intended to talk about but didn't. And then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting one. This is a sell high for a buy high. I took your advice. I traded Cam Thomas for Jonathan Kuminga. In my eyes, that's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think Kuminga has the higher ceiling than Thomas because Cam Thomas is eventually going to settle back at like 44, 45% high volume field goal. We don't know. I mean, Kuminga, the free throws are probably not going to be great, but the field goal percent is probably going to be a positive. And then if the free throw percent can just be not a massive negative, then he probably wins this head-to-head fantasy battle. There's some discussion in the chat room about when folks think Embiid's coming back. Some say not at all. That's a possibility. But in my eyes, you have to at least hold on for these 4 weeks to get this first update. This is Delante says, there's no chance I'd ever share you or Josh with my team. My league. It's just too big of an edge. I try to make up for it through retweets, engagement, even the Manscaped sponsor. I can imagine how hard it must be to have your growth hindered because you're too good at what you do. Yeah, that's it. That's it, man. I don't want to say it because it sounds like a real, like a dick thing to say, but the better you are at giving fantasy analysis, the less anybody wants to tell anyone else about you. It's the ultimate compliment for somebody to be like, screw you, I'm not spreading word about what you do. What's the upside for Paul Reed if he does play okay? I think I called him top 100 or slightly better on a show maybe 2 days ago. No, that's not true. On the Saturday show? Maybe it was yesterday. Who knows, man? I can't keep my days straight. Top 100 is, in my estimation, that's what you're targeting with him. If he starts to play better and Nick Nurse gets him up to 27, 28 minutes instead of 24, 25, then you're looking at maybe 80 to 75 range, but that's a best case scenario. And I think you should be aiming for 100. Let's see here. Some trade questions. You guys can throw those in the comments after the show. Are we picking up Amen Thompson with Freddie VanVleet out or be patient until the deadline? Ooh, that's a good question. It is deadline week, and it's really important to save your moves until a trade goes down. I think I made the mistake on Twitter of saying save them until Thursday. Save them until a trade happens because someone who didn't have value could pop up that becomes more of a difference maker the rest of the way. Freddie VanVleet is out. We don't have a specific timeline for him yet, which sucks because he's actually been relatively healthy. It's a left adductor issue, which, I don't think that's going to be one game. That's probably going to be a couple. And the Rockets, I think, pretty badly need his leadership and defense these days. And for Van Vliet, like, it's been generally a pretty good year from a health standpoint. I think he's missed, 2-3 games all season long. So he's going to try to get back as fast as he can. Amen Thompson is a very good streamer possibility here, but I would probably, unless news breaks later today that they're expecting Van Vliet to miss like 2 weeks or more, I think I would just leave it alone because I want to have my moves for the deadline. I don't think that Thompson is going to be a rest of season guy. There just simply isn't enough minute available for him when Van Vliet is healthy. So right now, this week in particular, and it's not something we've had to do since like the first 3 weeks of the season. First 2 to 3 weeks of the season, you're looking for these big rest of season guys that maybe analysts, myself included, didn't see leading up to the year. So like we're on the waiver wire. And then we've been in a stretch now of like the last 11 weeks, 12 weeks, where most of the pickups are related to injury. So, you're looking for somebody that can give you 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it is. And now all of a sudden you got deadline week and you have to treat it like the first week of the season again. You make your moves based on something you think could help your team for the next 10 weeks instead of Amen Thompson, who might be 1 or 2. But again, if we get a report that Van Vliet's going to be out longer, okay, fine. Then you make the move. You get 3 weeks, 4 weeks out of a guy. That's probably still worth making a roster because, like, that's a big deal. It helps your team for a month. That's significant. But as of right now, Van Vliet is not week to week yet. So I think I prefer to save my moves. Thank you, Albert. That's very kind of you. Says this is the best fantasy podcast in the world, especially for us dying breed roto folks. Yeah, there needs to be some roto discussion. And it's not because, like, look, more people play head to head. I get that. I just think that when you evaluate a player, you should evaluate them first for whether or not they make sense for a 9-category games cap format. Meaning, is this someone that has potential to be a game-to-game impact dude? And then for head-to-head, you make tweaks to that. Am I punting something? Does this player have a really good schedule coming up? That's how you can kind of take that baseline handicap of a player and tweak it up or down on a more head-to-head. Requires more of a micro analysis of, okay, well, what is this tonight? What is this for the next 4 days? What is this for the next 7 days kind of thing? Where roto, it's all about, am I going to get double-digit value out of this guy? Brandon Marcus, my old buddy, Brandon Marcus. Happy Brandon Day, everyone. One of the 2 hosts of our incredible Clippers show, by the way. Asking about Clay, the field goal percent murderer. Is he even worth it? I'm going to still say yes. I still think Clay is worth it. He had an awful start to the year, but he is at 119 in 9-cat right now. He's basically been sitting, he has a terrible start to the year. Then he had a run of like top 60, and he's kind of been sitting like around the edge of the top 100 since then, which, awful though his field goal percent may be, he is still a 9-cat 12-team start. Even if he's sort of sitting on the fringe, those guys that are, between 80 and 120, they are typically good enough to play. And I think he probably also is due for a good game after getting benched. So does he come out angry? Guess we'll find out. And here's one: Paul Reed versus Oscar Thompson for a stash. I don't know. I mean, Paul Reed's not a stash because he's like, he might have 8 weeks of being the starter there. And with Thompson, I don't know that he's going to be playing big minutes even right now. He had better numbers in their last ball game, but that could vanish very much in the next one because Monty Williams loves Kevin Knox for some reason. And I don't think Thompson really gets free reign in Detroit until closer to silly season, which is still like 6 weeks away, maybe 7 even. And Paul Reed might be useful for those 7 weeks. You might even be able to go Paul Reed for the next 5-6 weeks and then switch and get them both for when they are relevant. And that is the end of the line. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in live. Thank you to anybody that listens or watches after the fact. I will once again ask all of you on the way out to please go drop a thumbs up on our trade deadline live show. I need to get the schedule of that out to all the guys that are going to be on it and all of you so you can know what the 5-hour Thursday morning is going to be like. Find me again over on Twitter at Dan Bespers. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's been an incredible growth sequence for us here, especially leading up to the deadline. Like and subscribe. In fact, wherever you are, subscribe. Those subscriptions actually go a long way. It moves us up the board. You get sort of more algorithm and all that crap. It's this positive feedback loop. So every time you guys hit that button, that's good. Make sure do like every little one of those things. I thank you in advance. Shout out to ExpressVPN. Again, they're partners for today's show. They've been awesome. They've been with us for a few years as well. And Discord. I did last night's tweet storm exclusively in Discord. That link is also in the show description. You can click that, roll on in there. I'm on the free side right now. It's not behind the paywall. It might be down the line. But right now, this is me just trying to get all of you guys in there because there's fun discussions happening all the time in the NBA channel. And we're just going to keep growing what we do in our Discord as well. You guys can hear my voice starting to do a little bit thing. I'm probably talking too fast and too loud. And that's what happens when you just yell into the void for an hour straight. Trying to get a second show going today, right after lunch out here Pacific time. Stay tuned for that. You subscribe, you'll certainly get an alert when it comes out. I am at Dan Bespers. I am also just Dan Bespers. I'm a man without an @ symbol before his name when I'm not on the computer. I don't know. Nobody sees me when I'm not on the computer. Okay, everybody have a great few hours. I'll talk to you soon.